Have you ever wondered if there is a clock hidden deep inside your body? One that's literally counting down the moments of your life? Well, there is, and it's not just one clock, but trillions of them, ticking away at the very ends of your DNA.
So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to start with our body's built-in clock. Then look at exactly how these telomeres tick down. We'll also dive into the wild paradox of cancer, see how infections can actually make us age faster, and, most importantly, find out if we have any control over our own cellular destiny.
All right, let's jump right in. We're starting with one of the biggest questions out there, something people have asked for, well, forever. Why do we age? Turns out, the answer begins on a scale so small it's almost impossible to imagine.
I mean, really think about it. Why can't our cells just keep going? Keep repairing themselves forever? Well, it turns out this built-in limit is actually a feature, not a bug. It's designed to protect us. And the key to this whole system is a tiny little structure we're about to meet.
Okay, so meet the hero of our story, the telomere. This is basically a protective cap made of DNA and proteins that sits right at the tip of each and every one of our chromosomes. Its number one job? To be a guardian for our essential genetic code.
And this is the perfect way to picture it. You know those little plastic tips on your shoelaces? They stop the whole thing from unraveling? Well, that's exactly what telomeres do for our chromosomes. Without them, our DNA would fray, get all tangled up, and our cells would think it's damaged. They are absolutely critical.
So, now that we know what they are, let's get into how these protective caps double as our biological clock, literally measuring out the life of our cells. So here's the deal. Every time one of your cells divides, it has to make a perfect copy of all its DNA. But the molecular machinery that does the copying, well, it's not perfect. It can't quite get to the very end of the chromosome. So with each and every division, a tiny piece of that telomere cap gets snipped off. The clock ticks.
After maybe 50 to 70 of these divisions, those telomeres get too short to do their job. They can't offer protection anymore. And at that point, the cell gets a powerful signal. Time to retire. It stops dividing for good. This state is called senescence, and it's basically a cell's pre-programmed end of the line.
By the way, if you're finding this journey into our cellular world as fascinating as I do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us keep making more deep dives into the science that really shapes our lives.
Okay, so what happens when a cell decides to just ignore its retirement notice? This is where things get really interesting and where we run into a huge paradox, where the body's own safety mechanism gets turned against itself.
Right, so here's the crucial thing to understand. This whole cellular clock, this limit on how many times a cell can divide, it's actually a really powerful defense against cancer. It stops cells from growing out of control. But for cancer to even exist, it has to figure out how to get around this problem. It has to find a way to become immortal.
And the way it does that is by waking up a sleeping joint, an enzyme called telomerase. You see, in most of our adult cells, telomerase is switched off, but its job is to add back those little bits of telomeres that get lost, basically rewinding the cellular clock.
This slide lays it out so clearly. On the left, you've got our normal cells. The clock ticks down, telomerase stays off, and eventually the cell stops dividing. But on the right, you see what cancer does. In about 90% of all cancers, the cells figure out how to flip that switch back on, reactivating telomerase. They start rebuilding their telomeres, which gives them the horrifying ability to divide forever.
So we've seen this internal clock and how cancer can actually hijack it. But it's not just about what's happening on the inside. External factors can have a massive impact too. Let's look at how the very act of fighting off diseases can speed up the aging process. Think about it. When you get sick, your immune system launches this incredible defense. It creates huge armies of specialized cells to fight the invader. And how does it do that? Through rapid, massive cell division. But there's a cost. Every single one of those divisions wears down the telomeres of your immune cells, essentially aging your immune system over time.
And when you look at where the research is focused, it's pretty stunning. A whopping 89.4% of studies in this area are all about the link between viral infections and our telomeres. It just goes to show how much of an impact viruses are thought to have, while the effects of bacteria and other pathogens are still not as well understood.
Now, chronic infections like HIV are especially brutal on telomeres because they put the immune system on high alert constantly. But even acute, one-off infections like COVID-19 can cause a big hit. The two main culprits behind all this are sustained inflammation and something called oxidative stress.
which you can kind of think of as cellular level rust. It just puts a ton of pressure on our cells.
Okay, this all might be sounding a little bit out of our hands, but this is where the story gets really empowering. Because while our genes give us our starting point for telomere length, our lifestyle choices play a huge role in how fast that clock actually ticks.
And this right here is the key takeaway. This is so important. We are not just passengers watching our own aging process. The things we do day in and day out can either help protect our telomeres or, unfortunately, accelerate their decline.
So what can we do? Well, a huge factor is diet. Foods that fight that cellular rust and inflammation we talked about, fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes, they literally give our bodies the tools they need to defend their telomeres from all that daily damage.
And no surprise here, exercise is another incredibly powerful tool. Study after study shows that people who are physically active tend to have longer telomeres for their age. It's like you're making a direct investment in your long-term cellular health, building up a stronger defense against the aging process.
And of course, it's not just about diet and exercise. Chronic psychological stress has been directly linked to shorter telomeres, and habits with smoking just blast our cells with that oxidative stress. So managing stress and limiting these exposures can make a really powerful difference.
So in the end, telomeres are at the very heart of this incredible interconnected story. They connect our genes with the lives we actually lead. They tie together aging, our risk of cancer, our fight against infections, and the huge, profound impact of the choices we make every single day.